Hello, awesome clinical practice students. I know you guys have been working so hard these past few weeks. Some of you are transitioning into the full-time lead at this point. Some of you are just about on the verge of there. And right now we want to just do a review with you on what it means to be professional in the classroom. And what I want you to do right now is I want you to think about in your head what that actually means. Now, oftentimes our brain automatically goes to the way we dress, and that's natural. That tends to be the first thing, and that is part of the elements of professionalism. But we're going to look at a lot more than just our dress. But remember, for some of you, this is just reminders. And when you have professional appearance, this is part of your overall dispositions. You want to establish yourself as a professional, and the first thing that happens with this is your dress, how you're presenting yourself to others. And you got to remember that when you're student teaching, it's like an extended job interview, and the people you're working with are going to be people who are part of hiring committees, and they remember little things like that. And so you want to make sure you are dressed professionally and carrying yourself as a professional during this time. Now, these are just basic guidelines of do's and don'ts, and these are considered inappropriate attire and shouldn't be worn. And I realize that we drilled this into you multiple times, but this is just a quick review. Now, keep in mind, sometimes these items are okay, such as jeans. If your school allows you to wear jeans on a Friday, feel free to join the school and the community in doing that. But remember, we don't want holes, we don't want tears, we don't want things that are overly tight. So just be mindful of how you are presenting yourself. So guidelines, shirts, you want sleeves with at least 3 fingertips width. However, if you can avoid sleeveless, do that. Guys, remember, we want you in a collared shirt. It doesn't necessarily have to be a complete button down. It can be a polo, but keep that in mind. Ladies, if you're wearing leggings, make sure that the shirt you have over it is tunic length, which means it's going down like a long skirt would, and your backside is completely covered. We don't want clothing on you that's excessively form-fitting or excessively baggy, and we're not trying to ruin your personal style. What we're trying to do is set you apart from your students. We don't want the way that you dress to interfere with anyone's learning. Now, skirts, you want it at least to the tip of the middle finger when your arms are fully extended. You want to make sure that when you sit down, your skirt doesn't ride up at all. An easy way is throw leggings underneath it. It keeps it pretty safe there. You don't want low-cut shirts. Ladies that are coming down, or men, you don't want all your buttons done halfway down your chest. You also don't want crop tops. And keep in mind that shirts that sit right at your waist, if you raise your hands, it's going to lift up as well. And so if you've got those, just make sure you have a cami on underneath. We don't want any visible underclothing whatsoever. Your midriff, make sure that's covered, even if you're bending or squatting down, that all those items are covered up. So here's an example. If the fingertips are down, you can see that that's right about there, but that's awfully short if you're working in a school system with students. The safer thing would be down where it is now, or even to the kneecap, because you want to make sure that you're not interrupting somebody else's learning by the way that you are dressed. Now, guidelines for professional dress. It should not be a distraction to anyone at your clinical site. You want your hair color to be natural, and the hairstyle, facial hairs, piercings, tattoos, either discreet or covered. And again, this depends on the climate of your school. Some are more stringent on this than other. If there's something that you're not sure of, contact either myself or your clinical practice supervisor, and they'll work with you to make sure that what you're doing is appropriate. We want to answer your questions and help you be successful in all areas. Now, TAPS, your I keys, you're going to be evaluated under professionalism. And the wording on that says the teacher exhibits a commitment to professional ethics in the school's mission and participates in professional growth opportunities to support student learning and contributes to the profession. Now, that's a whole lot to unpack, but thankfully the state does a good job of breaking this down for us to know exactly what it is that we're looking for. So professionalism under this means that you're adhering to legal and ethical guidelines. And I know you are well familiar with the ethical guidelines as a teacher, the code of ethics. And you adhere to the standards defined for the profession. And sometimes these are going to be local schools have additional pieces in place. You need to keep that in mind. You always want to demonstrate professional demeanor and keep a positive interaction with others. You don't want to be speaking negatively about your principal or your school district or your mentor teacher or others around you. You want to always give the benefit of the doubt and speak about them in a positive sense. And you also want to respect the diversity of ethnicity, race, gender, and special needs. You want to realize that your students aren't going to necessarily be just like you, and understand that diversity does happen in your classroom. And that's a beautiful thing, because that's what heaven's going to look like. Now, you also want to have continuous self-improvement. Now, when I went over this with students, our most recent clinical practice group, I asked them what words stood out to them in this title. And the word that stood out was the self. They were pointing out that. The reason being, oftentimes when we think of professional development, we think of a school pouring into us what they want us to know. This looks at self-professional development, where you are the one initiating the growth in your own teaching style. And this can be things such as acting as a reflective practitioner. So thinking about things you did in that lesson, what you would change, what went well, and then acquiring and refining professional knowledge and skills. And again, these are things that you seek out. Maybe joining an organization based on your content area or grade level to get new strategies and techniques in working with students. And that you engage in ongoing professional renewal. You need renewal credits to keep your certification up to date. And the state isn't going to track you down and say, hey, you still need these credits. You need to keep up to date and make sure you're doing that. And then act as appropriate as a risk taker, stepping out of your comfort zone. And I'm not thinking anything like jumping out of an airplane or anything like that. What I'm talking about is, if you are a classroom teacher and you have been using lecture again and again and again, step out your comfort zone. Create an assignment that deals with group work or project-based learning, stepping outside, taking a risk, because we talked about it. It's okay to make mistakes. You go back as a reflective practitioner, decide what happened, where it went wrong, and how you can fix it moving forward. And then you want to embrace practices of a lifelong learner. This is something we want all our students to have. But when we do it, it allows them to emulate us. So you want to make sure you're taking on those practices of a lifelong learner and continuing to grow. It also talks about contributions to the profession. This means you serve as a role model for other educators. And I automatically think to Paul's words to Timothy, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers. You're coming into this school as a brand new teacher. What you lack in his history as far as with that school and years of pedagogy, you get to make up for an enthusiasm, because you're going in excited with all you've learned and wanting to try, and that rubs off on other teachers. Serve on school district or state educational committees, work groups, volunteer to assist in those areas, participate in professional associations. As I said before, join an association that matches your content level or grade level, and then continue to with the development of professional development. This can either be through presentations at your school or through writing, or something as simple as you've created this new activity and you're sharing it with other members on your team or other people on a grade level. Sharing and collaborating using the best of the best. Now, important dispositions to have. These are habits of thinking and acting regarding teaching and your students, and that you reflect on your practice, that you inquire, what can I do better? Not only of yourself, but asking your students, that you practice determination and persistence, that just because it gets hard, you don't give up. You stick with it because you're working with the students for their success, and you try to find new approaches to teaching. You realize that this strategy isn't working with this student, and you look up what I can do or what you can do to help this student be successful. So what are things that effective teachers do? They link professional growth goals to professional development opportunities. They're empowered to make changes and enhance learning experience. And this just helps the students. They select professional development offerings that relate to the content area or even the population of students they have. They are cognizant of legal issues associated with student records, that they maintain confidentiality, that they're not gossiping in the hallway when other students are around, or you shouldn't be gossiping in general, but talking in the hallway when other students are around and can overhear conversations. And then when you're actually being graded on this, and I use graded loosely, it's more like using the rubric on how you're handling this. It says that you carry out duties in accordance with federal and state laws, the code of ethics, established policies and practices of the school or district that you're in, that you maintain a professional behavior and demeanor, that your appearance is professional, that you're punctual on time and that you're there. You actually have that attendance, that you respect and you maintain confidentiality, and you identify areas of strengths and weaknesses and how it impacts student learning, and you set goals for yourself for improvement, that you're participating in ongoing professional growth, where you said you need more help, that's an area where you're seeking out extra assistance. You demonstrate adaptability to school change. When there's a fire drill, you don't complain that your whole lesson had to change. You adapt, you're flexible, and make those changes for the benefit of your students. And you engage in activities outside the classroom intended for school and student enhancement. Notice school and student. Your students have a basketball game. Go watch and cheer them on. There's a dance. Volunteer to chaperone. There is a choral concert or play. Go and see it. A student comes to you individually and says, hey, I'm part of a dance troupe and we're performing this dance at my church. I'd love to have you come. Go. Always participate in those events that you can. Now, after you're done with your in-class evaluation, whoever is supervising you may have questions about professionalism. And these are things that I want you to think about. How would you answer this? And if you don't have an answer for it, that's an area where you need to really reflect what you can do differently so you can answer it. So what impact, if any, had professional interactions with colleagues, such as collaboration, coaching, mentoring, or participating in professional learning community activities, had on your professional development this year? In other words, when you collaborate, how is that helping your professional development? How would you incorporate your professional reading and reflection into your professional practice? In other words, when you're reading, that you're actually using and applying. In Corinthians, Paul talks about us looking in a mirror and forgetting what we see. If you're just reading it, that's in essence what you're doing. You want to be able to apply that into your classroom. And then what has been your most meaningful learning experience, professional learning experience this year? Thinking of everything you've done. And now remember, this can be self-initiated or it can be something through the school. How has participation in professional learning impacted your student achievement? How has what you've learned and taken into your class actually helped your students? And then how have you been involved in the school improvement process this year? How have you helped your school improve and get better? In what ways has your practice been influenced by the school improvement process, if at all? If a process is in place, how has it impacted you? And then finally, how has student achievement been impacted by implementing the school improvement plan? If the school has an improvement plan and you've integrated in that classroom, what's that done for student achievement? I know this is a lot to think about and a lot to ponder over, but this is part of professionalism. This helps us grow as not only an individual, but as an educator, because the point of doing all of this is not just to pour knowledge into ourselves, but that we can empty that back out and better serve our students.